Hello, and welcome to my upper elementary senior project presentation at Dearborn Heights Montessori. I chose to research diabetes for my project because I have family members, including my papa, friends, and a teacher who have all been diagnosed and are managing a life with diabetes. My goal was to learn a little more about the disease, but after researching, writing my paper, and conducting my interview, I now know a lot about it. I conducted my interview with Kelsey Strait, who is the daycare director at Dearborn Heights Montessori. Thank you, Kelsey. Diabetes is a medical condition. It is important that blood sugar in the human body be controlled. Serious repercussions may happen if it is not managed. Type 1 diabetes causes a person to have high blood sugar and is diagnosed in younger people. It is sometimes called juvenile diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is diagnosed in adulthood and sometimes in teens. Gestational diabetes is specifically for women and may occur during pregnancy. Some repercussions for type 1 could be amputation of a limb. Some repercussions for type 2 could be eye damage or eye diseases. Some repercussions for gestational could be a baby being born premature and or stillborn. What is diabetes? Diabetes is a disease that causes a person to have high blood sugar. High blood sugar can damage organs such as kidneys, nerves, eyes, blood vessels, and the heart. Nerve and blood vessel damage can lead to blindness or even amputation of limbs. High blood sugar is a result of the body not getting enough insulin or not responding to the insulin it is getting. Insulin. Insulin is a hormone produced by an organ called the pancreas. Insulin takes the sugar, also called glucose, in the blood and helps it absorb into the cells. Cells then use the glucose for energy. Once the energy is restored, a person can go back to their normal life, while at times having to administer insulin when needed. Type 1 diabetes, also known as juvenile diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is caused when the body's own immune system attacks the pancreas and destroys the beta cells that make insulin. It is not known what causes the pancreas to stop producing insulin. But after all the beta cells are gone and the diagnosis of diabetes is given, it must be managed to stay healthy. Type 1 diabetes is usually diagnosed as a child, teenager, or young adult. Some people are diagnosed later in life, but once you have the disease, you will have it for the rest of your life. For some people, it may occur suddenly. For others, it may be because of genetics. It's important to note that diabetes is not contagious. Type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes can develop at any age, even during childhood. However, type 2 diabetes occurs most often in middle-aged and older people. A person is more likely to develop type 2 diabetes if they are aged 45 or older, have a family history of diabetes, or are overweight or obese. Though, more recently, kids and teens are being diagnosed with it as well. Some symptoms of diabetes are having to go to the bathroom more than usual, being thirsty and needing to drink a lot more water than normal, and being tired because there is not enough sugar in your body. Was the person able to produce insulin before they were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? Yes. One would have been able to produce insulin before being diagnosed, but then the body would have stopped producing it. A person might even be insulin resistant. That means a body does not accept insulin. Insulin may or may not need to be administered. Every person is different. Causes of type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is caused when the pancreas can't keep up. This results in blood sugar rising. Type 2 is normally caused by genetics, or in other cases, by lifestyle habits. If too much sugar is consumed over time, that can be a cause of type 2 diabetes, where as stated earlier, it may be genetics. Gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes is a form of high blood sugar affecting pregnant women. Those who develop gestational diabetes are at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes later in life. Gestational diabetes can show up in the middle of pregnancy. Women are normally tested for it between 24 and 28 weeks of being pregnant. Controlling gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes can usually be controlled by eating healthy foods and exercising regularly. If not controlled, blood sugar can cause problems for the expectant mother and her baby. There could be repercussions, such as the child developing obesity later in their life, or maybe even develop type 2 diabetes. If not treated, the baby could be born premature or stillborn. A baby could also die, either before or after pregnancy, as a result of uncontrolled gestational diabetes. In conclusion, I learned so much about diabetes. I learned that there are 3 types of diabetes: how diabetes is diagnosed, how it is controlled, and how to prevent it if it is not genetic, and the repercussions of not controlling it. I also learned about the importance of insulin and what its job is to keep the human body functioning normally. Finally, I learned many new things from my personal interview, and am grateful for learning so much from it in this project. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and have learned something as well. Remember to eat right, exercise, and always be aware of the signs and symptoms of diabetes for yourself and your loved ones. I would like to thank my family, classmates, and teachers for supporting me through my research project, and want to thank you all for listening.
Hello, I'm a sixth grader, and this is my senior project, Endangered Animals. Before we start, do you know any endangered animals except for the swift fox, polar bear, and rhinoceros? The polar bear, rhinoceros, and swift fox are 3 of many endangered species around the world today. Learning facts about these animals, why they are endangered, and why it should matter, can make a difference for our world. The polar bear is a large creature. It can weigh between 700 to 1,000 pounds. To 1,000 pounds. One of the main reasons that they are so big is because they're carnivores. They eat sea lions, ridged and bearded seals, whales, walruses, small rodents, seabirds, waterfowl, and fish. On all fours, the average polar bear's height is 5 feet and 2 inches. And when the polar bear stands on 2 feet, they are 7 to 10 feet tall. Females can range between 6 to 8 feet long. There are a couple of ways to tell the difference between a male polar bear from a female polar bear. One way is to notice how the bear urinates. If the urine appears to be coming out the stomach, it is a male. If the urine appears to be coming out the tail, it is a female. Another way to identify if the bear is a male or female is to watch the behavior of the polar bear. The mother usually takes care of the cub while the father is hunting for food. Polar bears are usually located in the northern part of the Arctic. Some places include Alaska, Canada, Russia, Greenland, and a couple of northern islands. Others are located in the southern part of Canada, and Hudson Bay and Montego. Studies have shown that the polar bear's aggression have been increasing towards humans over the years. Climate change is one of many reasons for this aggression behavior. Polar bears are forced to move to the coast and inland, where they encounter more humans. If a human comes close to a polar bear, sometimes the polar bear runs instead of fighting. However, other times they can get very aggressive around humans. Polar bears are very independent. Most of them do not like to mate or live with other polar bears. They prefer to live alone. They prefer to live and hunt alone. Most of the time, it's just the mother and her cub. The polar bear has been endangered since May 2008. Global warming also contributes to this destruction of the polar bear's natural habitat. The polar bear spends 50% of their life hunting for food. Due to these effects of global warming, it is very hard for them to find food. This leads to starvation. There has been an estimated amount of 2,100 polar bears that have died from the result of starvation. Humans have also contributed to this precious animal's endangerment through other practices. It is known that poaching and hunting these bears are common. Polar bears are also often killed when humans need to defend themselves. When they need to defend themselves to protect their lives from bear attacks. In conclusion, the polar bear is an important creature. Is an important creature on this planet. It is sad to know that that humans have contributed greatly to their endangerment. Next is the rhinoceros. Another animal that is becoming endangered is rhinoceros. Pacific species include the black, Johavian, and Sumatran rhino that are at high risk. The rhinoceros is commonly referred to the rhino. Rhinos can weigh between 700 to 5,000 pounds, depending on the species. The rhino can also measure up to 6 feet tall and 4 to 10 feet long. One way to identify if a rhino is a male or female is to look at the horn. The male's horn is larger than the female's horn. Another way to distinguish a female rhino from a male rhino is by observing the company they keep. The female is usually surrounded by her calves. Rhinos are mostly found in grasslands, swamps, rainforests, and floodplains. They can reside in many countries around the world, such as areas of South America, Botswana, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Europe, Pakistan, and Thailand. The rhinoceros is very independent. It lives a solitary life. Rhinos are also very uncompromising about their territory. Rhinos do not like other animals or humans invading their territory. Much like the polar bear, the rhino is a very aggressive creature. It is aggressive when other humans or animals invade their space. The rhino can become very threatened by outsiders, especially humans. How is it that such a large and powerful animal has become endangered? Unfortunately, although poaching is destructive, humans continue to engage in this illegal activity. Poachers all around the world have been killing and taking rhinos' horns for medicine, money, decorations, daggers, and more. Due to the poachers, the population of the rhino are dwindling. They are almost extinct, for estimated total of 27,000 rhinos left on Earth. As more humans are living and moving to Asia and Africa, the habitat loss has been increasing over the years. Increases in agriculture, production, and logging has been a big impact on the rhino's existence and survival. Agriculture, production, or farming contributes to habitat loss in the following ways. Farmers are taking land from the rhinos and logging or cutting and transporting trees to a different location. This leads to habitat loss, which results in food loss. Political conflict has also had a large influence on the world's rhino population. In army war zones, it is easy for a rhino to get killed. They have less ground protection, so it's easy to spot a rhino. Poachers often take advantage of this, as the rhino become easy targets. In summary, large changes in habitat has greatly influenced the status of rhinos' endangerment. Less ground protection and camouflage, hunting, and the value of rhino parks, and loss of food resources for the rhinos due to human conflict have greatly impacted the population of rhinos around the world. Another species that is endangered is the swift fox. The swift fox is a small creature. It weighs between 5 to 7 pounds. It is about 1 foot tall and a length of 23 to 24 inches long. The swift fox is indeed rather swift, reaching speeds over 50 kilometers per hour. Its speed helps them catch food and avoid predators. One way to identify whether a rhino is a male or female is by their size. Males are slightly larger than females. Swift foxes live in short grass prairies and desert regions such as Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Canada. Behaviors of the swift fox include that they are nocturnal, vocal, and non-territorial. There are several reasons why the swift fox is endangered. It has faced habitat loss due to agriculture, industrial, and urban development. Hundreds of swift foxes were killed accidentally during the early 1930s from predator control programs aimed at removing wolves, coyotes, and ground squirrels from prairies. There are currently populations of the swift foxes in the U.S. ranging from South Dakota to Kansas. South Dakota to Texas. However, the population is stable only in the central parts of the range. It is estimated that there are now 647 swift foxes divided between Alberta, Saskatchewan border and the Grasslands National Park. I had an interview with Miss Julia Ludgren about endangered species. I asked her 8 questions about what she does and about endangered species. For example, question number 3. I asked her, how do you feel about animals becoming endangered? Julia feels very sad and concerned that animals are becoming endangered. People don't understand what will happen to us as people and the world that we live in if we don't have these animals. Animals are living beings and they deserve to live. In conclusion, it is crucial that the polar bear, rhinoceros, and swift fox are safe and protected from poachers, farmers, and human extinction, and human society, so they do not go extinct. The extinction of any animal species greatly affects our planet, in negative ways, often a domino effect. Results further damaging our world. As is evident from shrinking population sizes, the protection of these species is an urgent matter for the future of our planet. As the keepers of the earth, it is the responsibility of humans to protect the earth from future damage and preserve the gifts we have been given on this beautiful planet. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my senior project.
Greetings. Have you ever heard of artificial intelligence? Well, artificial intelligence is extremely helpful in the world of law, healthcare, and bias activities.
Artificial intelligence in law is used for research, documenting criminals, and contracting. Lawyers use statistical models to predict the outcome of each case before it is scheduled argument. AI can predict when new crimes will occur. AI helps lawyers communicate with their clients better. AI can predict if a criminal will reoffend. Artificial intelligence can make work go down to 13% if all lawyers' work was automated. Artificial intelligence will not be taking over lawyers. AI can review all of lawyers' documents and find the correct one for that case. AI helps lawyers answer questions more efficiently and accurately. Lawyers' work that they accomplish every day would take them months if they didn't have artificial intelligence. AI helps lawyers plan ahead and helps others become more interested in law. AI is a great tool for lawyers. Artificial intelligence in healthcare. Artificial intelligence can detect a problem faster than a doctor. AI can diagnose cancer from a young age of a child. AI can see delicate parts of the body better. AI can also spot a tumor more than 90% of the time. AI makes the process for doctors faster, more efficient, and precise. AI can highlight critical cases and images. Artificial intelligence can automate a lot of doctors' tasks. It can also be implemented into scanners. Algorithms can be trained to spot facial features. AI can spot diseases easier than doctors. Artificial intelligence and bias. Artificial intelligence softwares can be biased depending on the kind of data used to make the software. For example, Google had been biased at a point in time. Bias is a thread that can spread through the entire software. For example, when the creator of Google used artificial intelligence data that was biased, it spread through the entire program and automatically took pictures of African Americans and put them in a folder named Gorillas. Another example is when a woman was trying to go into a software that had facial recognition and was trying to receive data for a group project. The software wouldn't allow her in because it would only allow men in because the data was only for men. Therefore, artificial intelligence can be biased. But if you use safety pills, it can prevent it from being biased. Also, if you are working for the government and making a software for them, you're not allowed to make it biased. Those are the 3 places that AI can help. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be talking about Vogue and fashion and how it's changed throughout the decades. The main decades I will be focusing on are the 20s, the late 60s, and 2020. Have you ever heard of Vogue? In 1892, Arthur Baldwin made Vogue a weekly high society journal. The first issue was published December 17, 1892, and it included columns on fashion, plays, and high society life. Arthur died in 1906 at the age of 49. 3 years later, in 1909, Condé Nast purchased Vogue, and the weekly issues that it once was turned into monthly issues. These issues focused on women's beauty and etiquette of the time, and they also dabbled in men's fashion. Condé Nast had the best illustrators, and Vogue became notorious for its covers. World War I was a hard time, and it made it hard for Vogue to deliver copies to Europe. So they started to print out of England, and they found that it was very successful and easier to ship to the US and the rest of Europe. The British Vogue was established in 1916 and was the first of many international issues to come. It was launched under the supervision of Elspeth Champcommunal, the first editor-in-chief of Vogue. This got their name out to the Eastern Hemisphere. World War I left people looking for light in a period of darkness, whether it was fashion, jazz, or Paris.
The 20s are most known for its flapper dresses or the short hairstyles of the time. The bob was originated by Irene Castle, and she was a famous ballroom dancer from the 1910s to the 1930s. 9 years after she cut her hair, the bob was wanted by women all over. Cloche hats fit around the head tight, and they were very popular back then, and they suited women's short hairstyles. If a woman was not wearing a hat, she was wearing a headband that usually matched their dress. Long pearls that you'd wrap once around your neck were popular, and the dresses of the time had dropped waist and were quite shapeless. The ideal body type for women during the 20s was boyish, and dresses played into that figure. Dresses were decorated with tassel, usually, so when women moved, the tassel moved with them. Sports became common during this time and led to casual sporting outfits. Condé Nast hired young French illustrators to draw for Vogue. The upper-class citizens of the U.S. frequently traveled to Paris, the French Riviera to be specific, later coined the playground of the rich by Vogue. Rich Americans loved Parisian lifestyle and its fashion. The elite of France and America had identical outfits in shape, style, and accessories. Traveling is a form of escapism. Escapism means to seek distraction from unpleasant realities. Vogue is a well-known magazine and was created by Arthur Baldwin. The magazine was pushed to the upper class of New York and wrote on the news, events, and fashion of that week. After World War I, the 1920s was about finding the light after 4 years of war and darkness. Fashion, jazz, and Vogue were some forms of escapism during the time. Fashion for women from the early 60s to the late 60s had huge differences. The early 60s was more classy, suburban housewife, first lady inspired, while the later 60s was spring, young, rebellious, and a taste of what the 70s were going to be. Diana Vreeland was Vogue's editor-in-chief from 1963 to 1971. She coined the youthquake of the 60s in 1965. A youthquake is a significant cultural, political, or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. The first surge was seen in London, where a new wave of fashion called mod, short for modernist, was growing in popularity. Both men and women wore this style. Men usually had greased hair and wore suits, taking inspiration from the 50s and famous bands of the time, such as the Beatles, The Who, and the Kinks. Trends up until the youthquake were set by the people high up in the fashion industry, or the people who could afford to set the trends. This change was an impact of youth culture. The ideal body type was long legs, a thin body and stomach, an overall petite silhouette. An example of the ideal woman was Twiggy. Twiggy was a famous model of the 60s, and she was 5'6" in her early 20s. Young people took control over their clothing, a main way to express one's mood or state of mind. Each era has its it girls. Some of the late 60s were Twiggy, Jean Trimpton, Brigitte Bardot, and Jane Birkin. Twiggy rose to stardom in 1965 and was named the Face of 1966 by the Daily Express, most known for her eccentric lashes. In October of 1967, Twiggy was photographed by Bert Stern for the cover of Vogue, wearing a red, blue, and green wide-neck turtleneck with her big lashes and simplistic makeup. Another icon of the time was Jane Birkin. She was a model and actress during the 60s and the 70s. She is most known for carrying baskets as accessories. No matter the day or weather, she's always seen with a basket. Her style influenced a great deal of the upcoming 70s, with her flared jeans and simple white tee. She ruled the 60s and is still someone to look to for when you need fashion inspiration. Jean Trimpton's rise to stardom started when her boyfriend David Bailey was commissioned by Lady Claire Rendlesham, the editor-in-chief at the British Vogue. She asked David to create something young and fresh. He insisted on Jean being the model for the shoot. So in 1962, at Vogue, it was expected for photos to be shot in a studio. David and Jean decided to get their photos on the streets of New York. This was surprising and new back then. Jean became well known, and a year later she was on the cover of Vogue with a cat eye and a hat made of daisies. For the Melbourne Cup in Australia, Jean was hired to present the prizes. Her seamstress was short of fabric, so all Jean's clothes hit above the knee. This shocked conservatives of Australia and is one of the many stories of how the miniskirt was originated. Fashion icons influence clothing and are constantly setting the example for years to come. When man landed on the moon, not only was there a shift in society, but also in the fashion world. Diana Vreeland took advantage of the space craze and promoted futuristic fashion in the pages of Vogue. Two designers at the forefront of the space age era were Andre Courrèges and Pierre Cardin. Both inspired by the space race, and the whole idea around this style was to push boundaries. Pierre Cardin once said, "The dresses I prefer are those I invent for a life that does not yet exist." This refers to how he likes to make futuristic clothing. This style today is called retro-futuristic, which is what people of the past thought people of the future would be like. The youthquake of the 60s had a huge impact on fashion and finally gave young people a chance to set trends for themselves. The late 60s had a considerable amount of young fashion icons that are still relevant to this day, and space-age clothing had a very prominent impact on the 60s, whether that was pushing the boundaries or making things a bit more scandalous and freeing. 2020 was a rough year for everyone. A year that will go down in history for all the wrong reasons. However, it wasn't all bad. Fashion still found ways to grow and make people come together even in isolation. TikTok, Pinterest, and Vogue dominated with Gen Z during these rough times. Now it's time to go back to March 19th of 2020, where grocery stores were crowded as people tried to get supplies as it was the start of an apocalypse. With the rise of bored teenagers, this led to TikTok and other social media apps growing in popularity. Through these apps, teens were able to find different aesthetics or clothing inspiration. With this came the revival of Y2K fashion. Y2K in terms of fashion stands for the year 2000. Another reason 2000s fashion is making a comeback is due to the 20-year rule. Fashion tends to repeat itself every 20 or so years. And thrifting has been an immense success over the past year instead of fast fashion, due to the height of teen activists trying to be conscious of the environment and basic human rights others may not get because of the places they live. Fast fashion has grown a bigger online presence, and they have clothing that is underpriced, and most teens find this appealing. They'll get something that's really trendy at the time, then a month or so later, a new trend comes up and the clothes are never worn again. Fast fashion workers are underpaid and work in sweatshops. A sweatshop is an unsafe work environment without fire extinguishers, emergency exits, or indoor plumbing. There are children missing school just to make clothes in dangerous places and working hours on end, only getting paid around 40 cents an hour. Thrifting causes fashion to come back from the past, and that's how trends get recycled. Nostalgia is another key reason on why early 2000s fashion is making a comeback. Nostalgia is a feeling of remembrance from the past that can make you feel either happy or sad. This is a selling point that most brands or the media tend to use. Another reason nostalgia sells is that customers are familiar with older shows and products. People sometimes will bond over commercials they watched as a kid. A staple of early 2000s fashion are Juicy Couture sweatsuits, usually worn with a Von Dutch hat and a designer bag, popularized by big celebrities of the time, from bubblegum pop star Britney Spears to hotel heiress Paris Hilton. Bubblegum pop is catchy pop music that's usually marketed towards teenagers and is heard on repeat on the radio. Small handbags that could only fit a few things were popular, like the Dior saddlebag or the Fendi baguette, both sported by Carrie Bradshaw. The last item of clothing that is probably the most memorable part of the early 2000s are the infamous low-waisted jeans. Millennials were skeptical about this comeback. They didn't like how they looked back then, and they weren't going to like how they look now. The jeans did end up coming back, but they were modified to resemble the skater jeans of the 90s, just with low waist. Early 2000s fashion has made a big resurgence during the global pandemic. Pop culture also plays a major part in fashion trends, and it determines what's in and what's last season. Social media is a key part in why pop culture influences fashion. Not only has there been a rise in early 2000s fashion, but also music. An example is Olivia Rodrigo's song Good For You, which is a breakup song that sounds like it came straight out of an angsty teen movie that was made in 2004. There has been a significant amount of this music, and it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. During the last year, Vogue's YouTube presence has been extremely prevalent in quarantine. Views have gone up by thousands, and Vogue has found a new place in the minds of young people. The most popular videos are either 73 questions with a big celebrity, or beauty secrets that also include famous celebrities, and they guide the viewer on how to properly apply makeup and what products they use for their skin. Vogue's biggest cover of the year is usually the September issue, but 2020 was a year where rules were made to be broken. The cover that received the most mainstream media attention was the December issue. On November 13th, 2020, Vogue posted a picture of Harry Styles gracing its cover on Twitter. Styles was the first man to appear a solo on the cover of Vogue and was wearing a pale blue dress. This sparked controversy. Some saw this as controversial, while others, most being fans, saw the complete opposite. This caused an internet argument, and this argument sparked news stories to be written about it. A few hours later, Bring Back Manly Men was trending, which was first said by Candace Owens, a conservative political commentator and author. To sum up what she said, society can't survive without strong men. This sparked the conversation should men wear dresses or not. In the end, Harry got the last laugh by posting a picture of himself from Variety magazine with the caption, "Bring Back Manly Men," wearing a blue suit with a frilly white undershirt that resembles a skirt with matching cuffs. He wore a cross necklace and had a banana in his mouth. Last year was rough for everyone, yet fashion trends still found a way to bring people joy, also a way to express emotions that cannot be spoken. Even in times of great darkness, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Early 2000s fashion made an enormous comeback, and social media plays a big part in what's on trend at the moment. Harry Styles being on the cover of Vogue will go down in history, and Vogue found a way to appeal to younger audiences by expanding their YouTube channel to a new generation. I interviewed Genoise, a teacher here at DHMC, who is well versed in fashion. A few things she said that interest me are how social media plays a big part in fashion because people can see the things they like, want to purchase, or watch fashion shows from the comfort of their own home. She also spoke on how the pandemic changed the fashion industry, how clothing businesses, whether big or small, are shutting down, and online shops are rising in popularity. Vogue just started as an idea in a man's mind, and is now one of the most well-known fashion magazines in the world. The 20s was a time of escapism, since World War I had just ended 2 years prior to the new decade. People who could afford to escape did. The late 60s had a handful of women who were influential to fashion for years to come. Space-age clothing was popular back then and has made its way in and out of fashion. Recently, there has been a resurgence in early 2000s fashion, and during the pandemic. Vogue has withstood the test of time and will continue to do so for years to come.
Hello, fellow peers and staff members. Today I will be presenting to you what causes mental illness, how to treat it, and some of their symptoms. Can any of you name any mental illnesses? The three main mental illnesses I will be talking about today are eating disorders, schizophrenia, and anxiety and depression. Eating disorders are serious mental health conditions characterized by severe and persistent disturbances in eating behaviors. They are associated with depression. They can even affect physical, mental, and social functions. Some types of eating disorders are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating, avoidant restrictive food intake, pica, and rumination disorders. Patients who have anorexia see themselves overweight and weigh themselves repeatedly. They even restrict how much they eat, exercise often, and force themselves to vomit to lose weight. People who suffer from bulimia have frequent eating episodes that is followed with forced vomiting or fasting. People with bulimia can be overweight or underweight. Binge patients lose control of their eating habits. Unlike bulimia patients, binge patients do not fast, nor do they have eating episodes. As a result, binge patients are usually obese. Eating disorders affect people of all ages, racial backgrounds, genders, and weights. Eating disorders usually happen during teen years and young adulthood. Eating disorders affect all genders. Treatment for eating disorders usually includes a team approach, the team consisting of a care provider, mental health professional, and dietitians. It is very important to seek treatment early for eating disorders. Eating disorder patients are at higher risks for suicide or medical complications. People with eating disorders usually have other mental conditions such as depression and anxiety. Recovery is completely possible. Depression and anxiety are different conditions, but they occur together. They even have similar treatments. Though each condition has its own causes, they share similar symptoms. Although occasional anxiety is a part of life, an anxiety disorder involves more than short-term worry. Someone with an anxiety disorder's anxiety does not go away and can get worse over time. Some types of anxiety disorders include generalized anxiety disorder, or more known as GAD, panic disorder, and phobia-related disorders. People who have generalized anxiety disorder display worry almost every day for almost 6 months. Their fears and anxiety cause them significant problems in their workplace, schools, or home lives. People who are diagnosed with panic disorder have frequent panic attacks. A panic attack is an abrupt period of intense fear that comes on quickly and reaches their peak within minutes. A panic attack can occur unexpectedly or can be brought on by a trigger, such as a feared object or situation. Someone who suffers from a panic disorder does not know when their next panic attack will occur. Depression is a common but serious mood disorder. Depression affects how you feel, think, and handle daily activities, such as sleeping, eating, or studying. Persistent depressive disorder, PDD, can last for at least 2 years. Someone diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder may have episodes of major depression, along with mild symptoms. Psychotic depression can happen when someone has severe depression plus a form of psychosis. Psychotic depression makes it so you have delusions, or see things others cannot. Seasonal affective disorder is characterized by the beginning of depression during the winter months. Seasonal affective disorder usually disappears during spring and summer, but can happen every year during winter. Although both anxiety and depression are both very common mental illnesses, they can occur at the same time, which makes it harder for people to deal with. So you have to be very careful when you meet someone who has depression or anxiety. Schizophrenia is a very serious disorder where people interpret reality abnormally. Schizophrenia may result in some combinations of hallucinations, delusions, and delusions. People with schizophrenia require a lifelong treatment. The causes for schizophrenia are not known, although researchers think that a combination of genetics, brain chemistry, and your environment will contribute to this disorder. Neuroimaging studies show that differences in the brain structure and central nervous system of people with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia has a range of problems with cognition, behavior, and emotions. Symptoms usually involve delusions, hallucinations, or disorganized speech, and an impaired ability to function. Symptoms for schizophrenia may vary. There is no concrete way to prevent schizophrenia, but sticking with a strict treatment plan can help prevent relapses or worsening symptoms. Mental health is very important, and most people need assistance to have mental stability, whether it be prescribed medication, therapy, or hospitalization. So if you know anyone who has a mental condition, please reach out to them and try to get them the help they need. Thank you for listening to my presentation.